My wife slowly lifted the microphone, smiled at the crowd, then looked directly into my eyes.
Everyone keeps asking how I managed to build $1 billion future. The truth is, the best business decision I ever made was marrying someone too ordinary to ever compete with me.
The ballroom erupted in laughter. I didn't move. Then my mother-in-law stepped forward, snatched my wedding ring, held it high for everyone to see, and said, "Look at this ring. This is the cheapest mistake my daughter ever made." She yanked it from my finger. "You've spent 12 years pretending to be a man while living off my daughter's family name." She tossed the ring onto the marble floor. "It belongs to this family." "You never did." The guests clapped. Some even stood to get a better view.
After tonight, security will make sure you never set foot near my family's company again.
She had no idea. The company she had just called my family's company no longer belonged to her family. And in less than 10 minutes, the entire billion-dollar deal they had spent 3 years building would collapse in front of every person in that ballroom. The first time I met my wife, she apologized because her coffee spilled on my shirt. She insisted on paying for the dry cleaning. I told her not to worry about it. She laughed and said she hated owing anyone anything. Back then, Olivia Whitmore was nothing like the woman the world would eventually see. She wasn't standing in front of television cameras wearing designer gowns. She wasn't surrounded by executives worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And she certainly wasn't looking down on me. She was just a beautiful woman, sitting across from me in a quiet coffee shop in downtown Chicago, smiling every time I told another terrible joke. If someone had told me that one day she'd publicly destroy our marriage in front of the most powerful people in the country, I would have laughed in their face. Because love has a strange way of making impossible things feel impossible forever. My name is Ethan Brooks. I'm 40 years old. People usually assume they know everything about me within the first 5 seconds. Maybe it's because I don't wear expensive watches. Maybe it's because I still drive the same dark blue SUV I've owned for nearly 8 years. Maybe it's because I don't believe success has to announce itself before you enter a room. Whatever the reason, people often mistake silence for weakness. I've never bothered correcting them. My father taught me something long before he passed away. The loudest man in the room usually owns the least. He spent 42 years repairing industrial machinery in a small factory outside Chicago. His hands were permanently scarred from decades of honest work. He never made millions, but every dollar he earned carried dignity. My mother was an elementary school teacher who somehow remembered the name of every student she'd ever taught. Neither of them left me enormous wealth. They left me something much more valuable. Humility, patience, discipline, and an understanding that respect should never depend on someone's bank account. Those lessons shaped every decision I made as an adult, including the biggest one. I founded a private investment firm with 2 college friends 12 years earlier. We never chased headlines. We never gave interviews. We specialized in acquiring struggling companies nobody wanted anymore. Factories, shipping businesses, technology suppliers, logistics firms. We rebuilt them quietly, sold some, kept others, year after year, little by little. The portfolio grew. By the time I turned 40, our firm managed assets worth several $billion. Yet, almost nobody outside financial circles knew my name. Exactly the way I preferred it. Olivia knew I invested. She just assumed I was another financial consultant, making a comfortable living. I never corrected her. Not because I wanted to deceive her, because she never asked. Whenever conversations drifted toward money, I'd simply say business was going well. That answer always seemed enough. At least in the beginning. Things changed after her father died. Richard Whitmore had built Whitmore Global Holdings into one of the country's largest infrastructure companies. Energy, construction, transportation, telecommunications. If a major city was expanding, chances were the Whitmores had money invested somewhere beneath the concrete. Richard was respected, feared, admired. His death left more than heartbreak. It left an empire without its strongest leader. That's when Margaret Whitmore truly stepped into power. My mother-in-law. People often described her as elegant, sophisticated, refined. Those people had never negotiated with her. Margaret believed kindness belonged in greeting cards, not boardrooms. She measured every human being using exactly one question. What can they do for this family? If the answer wasn't enough, you became invisible. At first, she tolerated me. She called me Ethan. Then she started calling me Olivia's husband. Eventually, she barely called me anything at all. Every family dinner became another reminder that, in her eyes, I wasn't worthy of sitting at the Whitmore table. "Ethan," she'd say while swirling expensive wine inside a crystal glass. "When are you finally going to stop playing businessman and build something real?" I'd smile. "I'm happy where I am." She'd exchange disappointed glances with Olivia. "You hear that?" she'd sigh. Happy. As if ambition is optional. Olivia never defended me anymore. Instead, she'd lower her eyes and quietly change the subject. That hurt far more than Margaret's criticism. Because silence from someone you love often speaks louder than insults. Over the next 3 years, I watched my marriage slowly become another business transaction. Vacations were networking opportunities. Dinner conversations became financial briefings. Anniversaries turned into charity galas. Every celebration had cameras. Every conversation involved investors. Somewhere along the way, the woman who once laughed over spilled coffee disappeared. In her place stood someone constantly chasing the approval of people who would replace her tomorrow if someone richer walked into the room. One rainy Tuesday evening, I arrived home earlier than usual. The house was unusually quiet. I placed my keys on the kitchen counter and walked toward my office. Before I reached the hallway, I heard voices coming from the dining room. Olivia and Margaret. Neither of them knew I was home. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. But then I heard my own name. I stopped walking. Margaret spoke first. "How much longer are you planning to keep carrying him?" Olivia didn't answer immediately. When she finally did, her voice sounded exhausted. "I honestly don't know anymore." Those 7 words hit harder than I expected. Then Margaret said something that would quietly change the direction of every decision I made from that night forward. "I've already found someone who actually belongs in this family." And before Olivia could respond, Margaret slid a thick black folder across the dining table. On the front was a single silver logo. One I recognized instantly. Whitmore Global Holdings. My heart slowed, because I knew something neither of them could possibly imagine. And the moment I saw that logo, I realized the future of the Whitmore empire was about to change forever. Margaret slid the folder toward Olivia with the confidence of someone who believed every future outcome could be arranged with enough money. Neither of them noticed me standing just beyond the hallway. I couldn't see every page inside the folder, but I recognized enough to understand it wasn't another quarterly report. It was a proposal, a merger proposal. Olivia slowly opened the first page. Her tired expression disappeared almost instantly. $1 billion, she whispered. Margaret smiled. 1.03, if everything closes on schedule. Olivia looked up in disbelief. I thought Blackridge Capital was still negotiating. They are, Margaret replied. But negotiations are practically over. The board already believes this is the future of Whitmore Global. She leaned back in her chair. Once this deal is announced at the Gala next month, every financial publication in America will be talking about us. Olivia laughed softly. My father would have loved this. No, Margaret corrected. Your father would have questioned every detail before signing anything. For the first time that evening, the room fell quiet. Then Margaret's eyes hardened. That's why I'm making sure nobody slows us down. She tapped the folder. And that includes your husband. I felt something tighten inside my chest. Olivia looked uncomfortable. What do you mean? Margaret folded her hands. Ethan doesn't belong in rooms where billion-dollar decisions are being made. He's a nice man, but nice men don't build empires. They watch other people build them. Olivia lowered her gaze. She didn't defend me. Again, Margaret continued. The gala is our biggest night in years. Investors. God has given you one face, and you make yourself another. The last thing we need is Ethan wandering around looking lost while reporters are taking pictures. Olivia sighed. I'll talk to him. No, Margaret replied immediately. Tell him the invitation was limited. Tell him anything. But he cannot embarrass this family. I stood there for another few seconds before quietly stepping outside again. I got back into my SUV and drove for nearly an hour without turning on the radio. The city lights blurred across the windshield, while one thought kept repeating in my mind. She wasn't afraid I would embarrass them. She was embarrassed by me. There was a difference, a painful one. When I finally returned home, the lights downstairs had already been turned off. Olivia was waiting in our bedroom. She smiled as if nothing had happened. There you are. I thought you were working late. I was. That wasn't entirely true, but after what I'd heard, I wasn't ready to start another conversation built on half-truths. She walked over and kissed my cheek. You look exhausted. Long day. She nodded. Mine too. Neither of us mentioned the folder. Neither of us mentioned the conversation. Sometimes silence isn't peace. Sometimes it's simply two people pretending their marriage hasn't already started falling apart. The following morning began like every other Tuesday. Coffee, emails, conference calls. Except one message immediately caught my attention. Confidential. Board authorization complete. Seller approval received. Final acquisition meeting scheduled. I stared at the email for several seconds. After nearly 11 months of negotiations, we had reached the final stage. Whitmore Global Holdings. The same company Margaret believed nobody could ever take from her family. The same company Olivia believed would secure her future. The same company the financial world believed was about to sign a billion-dollar partnership with Blackridge Capital. None of them knew another buyer had quietly acquired enough voting rights to change everything. Because we had never negotiated through headlines. Every purchase had been completed through independent holding companies. Every shareholder agreement had been signed privately. Every legal requirement had been followed perfectly. The acquisition had never been about destroying the Whitmores. It started almost a year earlier when one of our analysts noticed something unusual. Whitmore Global wasn't failing, but it was dangerously over-leveraged. Behind the glamorous interviews, behind the luxury events, behind the magazine covers, cash flow was tightening. Debt obligations were growing. Executives were making decisions based on appearances instead of long-term stability. Most investors ignored the warning signs. We didn't. Our firm specialized in businesses exactly like this. Companies with incredible value, poor leadership, and shareholders ready to sell quietly. The opportunity wasn't emotional. It was business. I never imagined that business would eventually collide with my marriage. 3 days later, I walked into our firm's headquarters. Unlike the glass towers downtown, our offices were surprisingly modest. No marble floors, no gold logos, no expensive sculptures, just experienced people focused on making good decisions. My partner, Daniel Mercer, was already waiting in the conference room. He smiled when I walked in. You look terrible. I've had a long week. I heard. I frowned. Heard what? He slid his tablet across the table. A society magazine filled the screen. Across the front page was a photograph of Olivia beside her mother. The headline read, "The Whitmore legacy prepares for its biggest night." Below it, one sentence caught my attention immediately. The highly anticipated billion-dollar partnership will be officially celebrated during next month's Whitmore Foundation Gala. Daniel watched my expression. You okay? I will be. You still haven't told them? I shook my head. No, they'll find out soon enough. Daniel leaned back. You know this becomes personal the moment those papers are signed. It already became personal. He studied me carefully. Are you sure you want to stay involved? I didn't answer immediately, because the truth was, I wasn't thinking about balance sheets anymore. I was thinking about my marriage, about Olivia, about the woman who once believed character mattered more than money. Somewhere along the way, she had forgotten, and I still didn't know if there was any way back. Just as I reached for my coffee, my phone vibrated. One new message. It was from Olivia. Don't make plans for the evening. Mum wants to discuss something important with both of us. I had a feeling I already knew what that conversation would be. I just didn't realize. It would become the last quiet dinner we would ever share before the gala changed all of our lives. The Whitmore Foundation Gala had always been more than a charity event. It was a statement. Every invitation represented influence. Every handshake carried the weight of future contracts. By 7 o'clock, the ballroom of the Grand Crescent Hotel shimmered beneath crystal chandeliers. Live strings floated through the air as executives, senators, celebrities, and investors filled the room in tailored tuxedos and designer gowns. I adjusted the cuffs of my navy blue suit before stepping through the entrance. A security guard glanced at my invitation twice. "Good evening, Mr. Brooks." I smiled. "Good evening." Across the room, Olivia stood on the main stage in a stunning crimson gown, speaking with reporters while photographers surrounded her. She looked radiant, confident, completely at home. Margaret noticed me before Olivia did. Her smile disappeared. She whispered something to the event coordinator, then walked toward me with measured steps. I thought I made myself clear. I received an invitation. I didn't send one. "No," I replied calmly. "But someone did." She forced a smile as nearby guests watched. "This evening is reserved for people who understand what's at stake." "I do. You don't." Without another word, she turned and climbed the stage. A few moments later, Olivia accepted the microphone. The room fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "thank you for joining us on what will become one of the most important nights in the history of Whitmore Global." Applause echoed through the ballroom. She continued speaking about growth, innovation, and legacy before her eyes settled on me. A faint smile crossed her face. "I also want to thank someone very special." Several guests turned toward me. "My husband, Ethan." Polite applause followed. Olivia laughed softly. "I've always believed in honesty. So tonight, I'll be honest." The applause faded. "Ethan is a kind man. But kindness doesn't build billion-dollar companies." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd. He never understood what this family has sacrificed. He was content watching from the sidelines, while the rest of us carried the future. More laughter. I remained still. Margaret walked onto the stage beside her daughter and gently took the microphone. "My daughter has spent years carrying burdens she never deserved." She looked directly at me. "Sometimes love blinds intelligent people." Fortunately, she finally opened her eyes. The ballroom grew quieter. Margaret stepped off the stage and approached me. Every camera in the room followed her. She stopped less than a foot away. "Give me your hand." I didn't move. I said, "Give me your hand." Slowly, I extended it. She gripped my wedding band between two fingers. "This ring," she announced loudly enough for the room to hear, "represents a marriage that should never have happened." With one sharp pull, she slid it from my finger. A collective gasp swept across the ballroom. She held the ring high. "My daughter deserves a partner who can stand beside her, not behind her." Then she dropped the ring onto the polished marble floor. The tiny piece of gold spun in a slow circle before coming to rest. No one moved. Phones rose into the air. Someone whispered, "Is this really happening?" Olivia didn't stop her mother. Instead, she looked down at me with cold certainty. "I think it's time we stop pretending this marriage works. I'll have my attorney contact yours." The words hung in the air. I looked at the ring on the floor, then back at Olivia. "If that's what you want," I said quietly, "I won't stop you." Margaret laughed. "For once, you've made the right decision." At that exact moment, the ballroom doors opened. Every head turned. 3 attorneys in dark suits entered first. Behind them walked the chairman of Whitmore Global's board, followed by the company's chief legal officer. None of them looked happy. The chairman wasn't looking at Olivia. He wasn't looking at Margaret. He was walking straight toward me. The music stopped. Conversations died instantly. The chairman extended a leather portfolio. "Mr. Brooks," he said, loud enough for the front rows to hear, "I'm sorry to interrupt, but these documents require your immediate signature before we can address the board." Margaret frowned. "What documents?" The chairman turned slowly toward her. "The ownership transfer." Silence. Absolute silence. Olivia blinked. What ownership transfer? The chairman's expression didn't change. The transfer confirming that Mr. Ethan Brooks is now the majority owner of Whitmore Global Holdings. The room erupted. For several long seconds, nobody in the ballroom moved. The chairman's words seemed to hang beneath the crystal chandeliers, too heavy for anyone to process. The majority owner, Olivia whispered, her voice barely carried beyond the first row. Margaret took one determined step forward, forcing a laugh that sounded more nervous than confident. That's impossible. There must be some mistake. Our family owns this company. The chief legal officer calmly opened the leather portfolio. There is no mistake, Mrs. Whitmore. He removed several signed documents. Over the last 11 months, an investment group legally acquired controlling shares from institutional investors, private shareholders, and retiring board members. The transaction was reviewed, approved, and finalized this afternoon. He turned toward me. Mr. Brooks is the managing partner of that investment group. The silence shattered. Guests who had been recording the humiliation only moments earlier immediately pointed their phones in a different direction. Whispers spread through the ballroom. My God, he's the buyer. How did nobody know? I thought Blackridge was buying the company. So did everyone else. Margaret grabbed the documents before anyone could stop her. She flipped through the pages with trembling hands. Every signature, every approval, every corporate seal, everything was real. She looked at me as though she was seeing a complete stranger. You planned this. I met her eyes. No, I planned an investment. You turned it into something personal. Her face lost every trace of confidence. Olivia slowly stepped down from the stage. The microphone remained on. Every word echoed throughout the ballroom. Ethan, you never told me. I never lied to you, I answered quietly. You never asked. She opened her mouth, but no words came. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked completely uncertain. Then another executive hurried onto the stage carrying a tablet. His face was pale. Madam Chair. Margaret looked at him impatiently. What now? The Blackridge partnership. What about it? They've withdrawn. The ballroom became even quieter. They've terminated negotiations. They said the agreement was based on the previous ownership structure. Now that the controlling interest has changed, they're no longer proceeding. A collective gasp swept through the audience. $1 billion. Gone. Not because anyone sabotaged the deal, not because of revenge, because the company now had a different owner. Investors began talking among themselves. Journalists rushed toward the stage. Questions flew from every direction. Mr. Brooks, did you intend for this to happen? Will you replace the board? What's your vision for Whitmore Global? Security struggled to hold reporters back. I accepted the microphone from the event host. The room gradually became silent again. I know many of you expect a dramatic speech. A few cameras zoomed in. But you're going to be disappointed. I looked across the ballroom. I didn't purchase this company to embarrass anyone. I purchased it because I believed it could become stronger. I believe businesses succeed when they're built on long-term trust, not short-term appearances. No one interrupted. I also didn't come here tonight expecting my marriage to end in front of hundreds of strangers. I glanced briefly toward Olivia. I would have preferred none of this happened. Her eyes filled with tears. For the first time that evening, she wasn't looking at a businessman. She was looking at her husband, the man she'd stopped seeing long before this night. Margaret took a slow breath. Ethan, I'm sorry. Those two words surprised everyone, including me. She had probably never apologized publicly in her entire life. But some moments change people. Others simply expose who they really are. I judged you, she continued. I believed money and status defined a man's worth. I was wrong. The ballroom remained silent. I nodded respectfully. I appreciate the apology, but respect cannot exist only after success becomes visible. She lowered her head. There was nothing else to say. Olivia walked toward me. I don't expect forgiveness. I know I failed you. I stopped believing in the man I married. She looked down at the wedding ring lying on the marble floor. With shaking hands, she picked it up. I should never have let this happen. She held the ring out to me. I looked at it for several seconds before gently closing her fingers around it. "You should keep it." She looked confused. "It reminds both of us that a marriage isn't broken in one night. It's broken one moment of disrespect at a time." Tears rolled down her cheeks. She understood. The ring wasn't something that could simply be placed back on my finger. Trust had to be earned again. Whether that would ever happen, neither of us knew. I turned back toward the audience. "As for Whitmore Global, I have no intention of destroying it. The employees didn't create tonight. The engineers didn't create tonight. The families who depend on this company didn't create tonight. They deserve stability." The executives exchanged relieved glances. "We'll honor every responsible commitment. We'll protect every honest employee. And beginning tomorrow, we'll rebuild this company on integrity instead of pride." The ballroom erupted into applause. Not because I had won, but because people recognized something they hadn't expected: mercy. Over the following months, Whitmore Global underwent sweeping reforms. Debt was reduced. Operations became more transparent. Employees were rewarded instead of overlooked. The company regained the confidence of investors, not through flashy announcements, but through consistent leadership. As for Olivia and Margaret, they stepped away from executive roles. For the first time in years, they experienced a life where titles no longer spoke for them. Whether our marriage could survive was a question that only time could answer. Some wounds heal. Others become reminders of the lessons that shape the rest of your life. Looking back now, people often ask me what it felt like to watch a billion-dollar deal collapse in front of everyone. They're always surprised by my answer. I don't remember the applause. I don't remember the cameras. I don't even remember the silence. What I remember most is a simple gold ring lying alone on a marble floor. Because that ring taught me something no fortune ever could. Never measure a person's value by what they appear to own. Character is the only wealth that cannot be bought, inherited, or taken away. And sooner or later, life has a way of revealing exactly who the truly wealthy are. If there's one lesson I hope you take from my story, it's this: never confuse someone's silence with weakness or their simplicity with failure. The world often celebrates loud success, expensive clothes, luxury cars, and powerful titles, but the strongest people rarely feel the need to prove who they are. True character is revealed not by how someone behaves when they have everything, but by how they treat others when they believe they have all the power. Respect should never be based on wealth, status, or appearance. Every person you meet is fighting battles you know nothing about, carrying dreams you cannot see, and building a future that may surprise you. The person others ignore today could become the one they depend on tomorrow. That's why humility is never a weakness. It is one of the greatest forms of strength. This story is also a reminder that success built on arrogance is fragile. Businesses, families, friendships, and marriages cannot survive without trust, honesty, and mutual respect. The moment pride replaces gratitude, relationships begin to crack. Words spoken in anger or humiliation may last only a few seconds, but their consequences can last a lifetime. At the same time, real strength is not found in revenge. It's found in self-control. Anyone can respond with anger, but it takes wisdom to remain calm when others try to break you. Dignity has a way of speaking louder than insults, and integrity often becomes the greatest victory of all. So, no matter where you are in life, remember this: keep working quietly, keep improving yourself, and never let someone else's opinion determine your value. Your worth is not measured by applause, possessions, or public recognition. It is measured by your integrity, your resilience, and the way you treat people when no one is watching. If this story touched your heart, or reminded you of someone you've met in life, share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might encourage someone else who's going through a difficult season. And remember, never judge a person's future by their present circumstances. Life has a remarkable way of rewarding humility, patience, and unwavering character.